Proverbs chapter 11, verse 17 is where our devotion comes from today, and it reads this: Those who are kind benefit themselves, but the cruel bring ruin on themselves. There's another version I want to bring this up in the New King James Version that reads something like this: The merciful man does good for his own soul, but he who is cruel troubles his own flesh. Literally says similarly the same thing. I just love the wording here because he uses the term merciful. And this is actually a proverb that I think reveals a lot of the issues of the sickness in relationships with others and relationships with ourselves. So many relationships are struggling today to either be started or to move in a continuous fashion due to a lot of fear that is taking place all over social media from people who are speaking from those positions, whether it's something that happened to them or something that they are projecting is going to happen to others based on what they heard.
The woman does not care if you are happy in the relationship.
There is no such thing as a good girl.
You are delusional if you think that your girlfriend doesn't have a backup guy or multiple backup guys.
And it's provided a lot of sickness in today's culture. So many debate shows, so many podcasts, so many people who are looking to shift blame from one person to another as to why things are the way they are. But Solomon addresses, in the grand scheme of this text, the aspect of being merciful and being kind, and that it ultimately benefits you. And oftentimes we don't look at this aspect of being kind, being merciful, or simply serving as something that is beneficial for us, right? Because all we think about is giving somebody time, giving somebody a gift, giving somebody attention. I'm giving. And oftentimes we look at that and say, well, what's in it for me? But have you ever considered that you're actually benefiting yourself when you serve? Here's how. Because when you serve, it opens up the opportunity for the other person to be more willing to serve you. This aspect that I am going to give something to somebody, and enough of the giving can ultimately open up the pathway of reciprocity. The problem with our culture today, though, is that we don't give. We're actually very hesitant to give, fearful to give. Fearful to be the first to give, fearful to be the first to show up, fearful to be the first to love, fearful to be the first to admit feelings, right? And again, it's not to say that that's an awful thing, because I think there's room and context to understand that. However, we cannot allow that past experience to bind us in fear from experiencing something so lovely with relationship with others and even ourselves in the future. And the biggest reason why these relationships are as sickly as they are in today's culture is because many people, perhaps even yourself, don't really know how to give without needing someone else to give that back to you. The mere fact that we are afraid to be the first to give, the first to show appreciation, the first to send the message, the first to get some clarity, because we're unwilling to be the first to serve that person by actually genuinely asking questions about that person, we are closing ourselves off from the very relationships we get online saying we want, but aren't willing to do the work to create. And truth is that transformative relationships, genuine, impactful relationships, always have a root in two people or a group of people willing to serve each other instead of everyone waiting around to see who's going to serve first. And I think the issue is a lot of people are waiting for someone else to commit to that space, to then give them the permission to step into it. Right. I need to see a little bit more out of you before I go in. I need to see a little bit more of the commitment and of the consistency before I step in. And what's really showing there is pride and ego. We aren't really willing to lay that down to actually give this the opportunity it deserves. And what we do is we withhold ourselves from experiencing that. And ultimately, in a lot of ways, in a grand scheme of things, when it comes to creating community and relationships with people, we are actually robbing others from experiencing the love of God as believers, because community is where that happens. Giving and serving one another is where God's love is actually encountered. And I just want you to consider that it's possible from this specific proverb, looking at the bigger picture of seeing the importance of mercifulness and kindness and living that out in your life and seeing that it benefits yourself, because it actually opens up a window for you to now be served because you were the first to serve. And when you have two people who come together to serve one another, a relationship is a beautiful thing. Are you serving in the relationships that you carry? Or are you just waiting for others to do it for you first, for you to then have room to do it for them? Because then I would argue that that's not a legitimate love that's at the root of that. A lot of times it's selfishness and pride that still has a hold of you there. And it's something that we want to consider. So I think if we want to create healthy relationships, this is the big picture. Be merciful, be kind, and be willing to serve others. Be willing to serve them by asking them questions. Be willing to serve them by getting them to share more about who they are. Staying here in this mindset of fear is actually what's going to hinder you from having the relationships you really desire. And if we are actually going to create healthy relationships for our lives, we have to be willing to no longer be bound by the moment and actually begin to move forward by doing it afraid. Because honestly, the fear shows up in moments that maybe resemble what you were once in relationally with someone else prior to that person or that group of friends. And you're reminded of the pain, you're reminded of the hurt, you're reminded of the heartbreak. And because we've made the decision that I don't want to do that again, we've just kind of subsided from all that. And it's better to just stay back and fall away and push that person away. So that way I don't have to really engage myself in that connection. And it's almost a predetermined decision that we've made. Therefore, no longer giving us the opportunity to actually be present in that space with that person, cultivating a relationship. And I think those habits are what's making our relationships sick, not just with others, but with ourselves too, because we're not merciful and kind to ourselves, because we're not loving and graceful and kind to ourselves, because we put these insurmountable expectations on our own lives that we were supposed to be here by this time. We were supposed to be here by this time. We were supposed to be over this year, 2, 10, 20-year addiction in 2 days and 2 months, and we haven't done it yet. And so I'm a failure. I'm a this, I'm a that. And so we say all these things over our lives that aren't actually true. So that's why when people come to us, we're not too kind and merciful, because we don't even have that for ourselves. And I just want to encourage you, if you find yourself in this space regarding relationships with others and relationship with yourself, think of this proverb the next time you get into a connection or a situation where you have an opportunity to serve somebody. And I want you to be willing to serve them and do it afraid, not for the sake of what you could get as a result of serving them, simply because you have love for this human being in front of you, not for your own selfish gain, but simply for their well-being. And I think when we look at it from that perspective, our willingness to step into those spaces has a shift, and we actually are able to create meaningful relationships in our lives. And when it comes to the relationship with ourselves, I encourage you to look at the stories you're telling yourself, all of the things that you're consuming through your eyes and through your ears, the content you're seeing, the content you're hearing, that is possibly reiterating those negative, self-defeating thoughts in your life. And I want you to remove those and replace it with good content, sermons, Bible, worship music, getting in community and listening to people who are being vulnerable and in their moments and in their seasons of life, but are telling you and expressing to you how good God is in the midst of those things. Be willing to listen to the right things and the right people, and replace that stuff and watch some things change over time. And in the meantime of doing all that, set reasonable expectations for yourself. You were not ever going to overcome that lifelong addiction in 2 months. Now, I'm not saying God can't do it, but for a lot of people, that's not their story. And maybe it's not yours. So don't put that expectation on yourself, because then when you do fail, you're going to look at yourself more as a failure, but it's out of context. It's misdiagnosed. Maybe we had too much on the plate. Maybe we expected too much out of ourselves. Maybe we told ourselves we were going to be here by this age and be here by that age. It hasn't happened, so I failed at life. But God doesn't see you that way, my friend. He doesn't. And I think you shouldn't either. So revisit those stories that you're telling yourself and then compare it to truth. Who told me if I didn't have this, that, and the third, that I was a failure at life? Who told me that I wasn't all I was supposed to be because I didn't have this, that, and the third? Who told me this? And then evaluate the source that you find, the resource that you find. And then ask yourself, is this of God? And I'm willing to bet you more times than not, it's not, because God doesn't even speak that way. He speaks oh so tenderly, so gently, patiently, cheering you on to remain on the lane he's called you to, not filling your head with all these doubts and lies and fears that is clearly of the enemy. So the moral of the story from this proverb in this devotional is be kind. And I think you being willing to serve others first and move with a servant attitude, servant's heart in the relationships that you create with others, and also serving yourself with kindness and mercy, is what actually is going to bring life back to your relationships. And it may cause you to step out into some space of uncomfortability and doing things that you aren't used to doing. But I want you to do it afraid anyway, because I think your relationships will always see a stronger benefit from it. So listen, I appreciate you guys so much for tuning into this video. If you like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe, like this video, share this devotion with a friend who can give an ear to this message. I appreciate you so much. And until the next conversation, be easy and be breezy, my friend. Peace.